Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to discuss the differences between the megabanks, also commonly referred to as the big banks, versus smaller institutions like local banks and credit unions, and why you should consider closing your account if you have one with one of the big banks, and instead going with a more local community option. Finally, we'll get into how to go about doing this so that it's as convenient and as smooth of a transition as possible. Now, when we're referring to the megabanks or big banks, we're talking about institutions that I'm sure you've heard of, like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citi, and JP Morgan. Now, these are national banks. There are also international megabanks like Deutsche Bank and HSBC and others. We're not going to be focusing on those today. They are lumped into the same category for all intents and purposes, but we're just going to be focusing on institutions on a national level, not an international level, okay? Now, that's going to be compared to credit unions and smaller banks. So here I have listed some of the most local credit unions in my area in Southern California. These include LBS Financial, Navy Federal Credit Union, Orange County's Credit Union, and Southline Credit Union. So if you're not familiar with any of these, that's okay. It might be because you live in maybe Northern California or a different state. You might have other credit unions or smaller banks that you're more familiar with. For all intents and purposes, these are all under the same category, and most of them are actually all under the same umbrella, and they work together under a system called co-op, which we'll get into a little bit later as well. All right, so let's get into a little side-by-side comparison now. So the megabanks are for-profit institutions. They're shareholder-owned. They have questionable customer service, higher account fees and overdraft penalties, higher interest rates on loans and mortgages. They might be slightly more convenient. That's debatable. They definitely have a bad track record of ethical standards, which we'll get into a little bit later. Each account that you have with a big institution is insured by the FDIC of up to $250,000. Most of them have really good credit card rewards programs. So if you're interested in like racking up points for traveling, we can get into a whole nother discussion about that. I'll actually probably make another video on that. In addition to, they offer small business accounts. So it shouldn't be too hard getting a small business account with one of these mega banks. Okay. In comparison with credit unions, they are nonprofit, customer-owned entities. They have excellent customer service, definitely lower account fees and overdraft penalties when compared to the mega banks. They have lower interest rates on loans and mortgages when compared to the mega banks. I would consider them just as convenient, but some people would argue otherwise. They also have a great track record of ethical standards. Each account, instead of being insured by the FDIC, is insured by the NCUA of up to $250,000, just a different entity, same amount of insurance. On the other hand, however, they are definitely not competitive with their credit card rewards programs. So if you're looking to get, a credit card so that you can rack up points for travel, a credit union is not the kind of credit card that you want to do that. Most don't offer small business accounts, but there are some that do. Like, for example, in my area, Southline Credit Union offers small business accounts. That's who I have my small business with, actually. And some also require a membership qualification. So there's certain credit unions that only work with certain entities, like, for example, with teachers or with federal employees. There will be a specific credit union sometimes that only works with those people, so that you might need to be invited by a family member or a coworker or something like that to get involved. But most of the credit unions, they're pretty much open to anybody. So you might be asking yourself, why does this even matter? I already have a bank account. I'm good to go. Well, think of it like this. Your consumer choices arguably have a greater direct impact in the world than who you choose to vote for at the ballot box. This includes things such as the brands of food you buy, clothing, electronics, where you shop, and also whom you bank with. For example, when you purchase organic non-GMO foods at the grocery store or farmer's market, you're sending a direct message to the agricultural industry, creating a higher demand for these kinds of foods. This in turn leads to an increased production of organics to meet that demand, increasing the competition, variety, and lowering the price over time. The same logic applies to when choosing to buy an electric vehicle over a combustible engine vehicle, or pretty much anything else that you can purchase. The more demand for it, the more it's produced, which leads to greater innovation, variety, and affordability. This principle can also be applied to where you invest or divest your money. The more money that's deposited into an institution, the more power and influence it has. And when you withdraw money and close your accounts with an institution, the less power and influence it has. Additionally, when you deposit money into a financial institution, it doesn't just simply sit there. It goes to work in investments and loans to help make it profit. The megabanks invest your money both nationally and internationally into things that are often detrimental to our economy, other nations, and the environment. Nationally, they've been responsible for investing in things like the shady subprime mortgage loans, which led to the 2008 market crash, as well as investing billions of dollars into mega polluting industries like fracking, fossil fuels, and fossil fuel infrastructure, like the Dakota Access Pipeline. Internationally, they've been caught and fined for doing billions of dollars of business with, as well as money laundering to, known arms dealers, mobsters, terrorist organizations, and corrupt regimes, resulting in the overthrow of legitimate governments and the destabilization of entire regions, making the resources easier to acquire and profit off of, resulting in war, global pollution, and tremendous loss of life. Not to mention using your invested money to pay their CEOs exorbitant salaries and bonuses, even after they're caught committing federal crimes. It only takes a quick Google search to see what kind of stuff I'm talking about. Let's look at some examples. America's biggest banks are felons. Here's how to make them pay. 3-count felon, JP Morgan Chase, caught laundering money. Once again. Big banks pay $5.6 billion, plead guilty to felonies over currency and rate fixing. Now, I'm not exaggerating one bit when I say this list goes on and on, practically into eternity. You can get lost Googling articles like this for days. It's literally an infinity pit of scandal after scandal and corruption. Yet they're still allowed to operate for some reason, and millions of people still bank with them every single day. It's amazing. So, on the other hand, just like with other community-based small businesses, credit union profits stay local. Money earned is funneled right back into the local communities by means of employee salaries, small business loans, investments, capital improvements, and discounted services. They also give back with charitable donations to local organizations and financial support of youth athletic programs. So even after all this unethical stuff that you've heard, you might be saying, well, you know what? It's just too inconvenient to switch. I'm not going to move all my accounts and direct deposits and everything like that. Well, hear me out for a second. So the number one objection I've heard is credit unions are inconvenient because they don't have as many branches or ATMs nationwide. Well, the Co-op ATM network offers nearly 30,000 no surcharge ATMs covering all 50 states, as well as 10 different countries, a network that's larger than almost any banks. This list includes all 7-Eleven locations, Costco, and other credit unions throughout the country. So another common objection I get is credit unions don't have the mobile banking apps to access accounts, pay bills, or transfer and receive funds. Well, just like the big banks, most credit unions offer mobile banking apps for Android, Apple, or tablet. With a mobile app, you get access to your accounts and transaction history. You can pay bills and transfer funds, and you can locate nearby branches, just like the big banks apps. Many of these apps offer great services too, like ATM locators or customer service contacts. Thanks for joining us. If you think you're now ready to make the switch, you can go to banklocal.info and search your city to compare all the local banks and credit unions in your area. Also, be sure to subscribe to our channel to be updated on new content, and visit our website at setsailins.com to schedule an appointment and see our other services that you might be interested in. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you soon.